Good afternoon. The joint hearing on the Assembly Natural Resources and Environmental Safety and Toxic Material Committees are called to order. Welcome to the hearing to investigate the future for product stewardship and extended producer responsibility. I am the chairman of the Environmental Safety and Toxic Material. Mr. Chesborough, who's just joined us, is the chairman of the Assembly Natural Resources. As you know, we have some budget discussions, and I apologize for making everybody wait as the Democratic caucus continues to meet on the subject. Our vice chair of the Environmental Safety and Toxic Material, Mr. Miller, has been working on product stewardship programs in today's hearing. I look forward to his ongoing participation as we move forward. Today we want to hear about programs that work. We want to hear from other states, other countries, where they have programs that are working. I hope we can learn how we can find new ways to cut the cost of environmental compliance, decrease the cost to local governments and taxpayers, create more green jobs, and protect the public health and safety. It's a win-win-win. We want to hear about extended producer responsibility, EPR, and we want to talk about whether a framework model like green chemistry for solid waste will work for California. The issues for today's hearings include the following, but not limited to these issues. Should California expand the use of EPR for those products of the waste stream that pose environmental risk, public health concerns, or high costs to local governments or consumers? What other states and countries implement EPR framework programs, and can those serve as a model for California? Next, should California develop a broader EPR framework program to allow greater flexibility in regulating high-risk and high-cost products? Last year, the legislature passed two important product stewardship bills, one for carpets, AB 2398 from Speaker Perez, and one for paint, AB 1343 by Assemblymember Huffman. Today's hearing will be a good chance to learn how those programs are progressing. One of the overriding issues we face is the Effect Prop 26, which was recently approved in November of 2010. Will this limitation on state and local fees have an effect on existing and future product stewardship programs? We have a full agenda this afternoon, and we're starting 45 minutes late. So this is also an opportunity at this hearing to hear from the public, and it's important that the public share their views. Because of the time constraints, we'll have the public hearing at the end, and I'll ask people to limit their remarks to 2 to 3 minutes. Now I'd like to turn it over to Chairman Chesborough.
Well, thank you, Chairman Wachowski. I'd like to add my apologies. We had a mandatory caucus discussion that we really couldn't leave, so I know it's rude to show up 45 minutes late, so I really want to extend my apologies to you. As I think most people in the room know, that I served for a total of about 10 years on the California Integrated Waste Management Board, and while I was a member of that board, we concluded that while AB 939 did a lot, not the least of which was getting the state's waste reduction diversion rate well above the 50% mandated by the law, and the local governments and industry were very successful in putting together programs that got us there. We had asked all we could of local governments to solve waste problems at the back end of the system using taxpayer and garbage ratepayer money. So we adopted a strategic directive that stated that going forward, we would develop relationships with stakeholders that resulted in producer-financed and managed recovery systems, otherwise known as extended producer responsibility or product stewardship. The CIWMB also adopted a legislative framework in the hopes that someday in the newly created Cal Recycle would have the authority to analyze the waste stream and require that certain products have a producer-designed, financed, and managed recovery system, which ultimately means whoever designs, produces, sells, or uses a product takes responsibility for minimizing its environmental impact through all stages of the product's life cycle. The intent of this hearing, as my fellow chair has indicated, is to review the current state of EPR implementation in Canada and other parts of the world, and the progress made in California over the last 3 years on extended producer responsibility legislation implementation. We also wanted to let local governments share what their experience has been in regards to costs and the ability to comply with existing disposal bans and demands from the public to have more recycling options. I would like to say that I've been an author of unsuccessful EPR legislation attempting to broaden the discussion into a framework, and I have a frustration, and I hope today we can begin to get to the bottom of this question of why has it been so difficult for us in California to do what's being done elsewhere in the world in forming partnerships with the producers of products. And the discussion has to be a assumed top-down command control discussion about the state's going to make you do something. That's not, as far as I understand, and of course we'll hear from some of the presenters today, how it's worked elsewhere, but that's not my understanding of how it's worked, and it was never my intention as an author to try to create that type of system. But it's very, very difficult to figure out how we get the discussion going to find that common direction by which industry is participating with us and figuring out the best market-based, flexible approach that can address upstream solutions to our waste problems. I wouldn't be in politics if I wasn't an optimist. I continue to be optimistic that we will find that pathway beginning today, perhaps, but at least eventually, to working together to address the rest of the waste stream that we've been unable to economically address through our existing mechanisms. I want to thank the Product Stewardship Council, who's been, I know, working mightily to try to engage those discussions. For their help in arranging for some of our presenters. I also want to thank all of our presenters for their effort and time to be here. A special thanks to, I think, our longest distance traveler, Neil Hasty, who came all the way from Vancouver to educate us today on the EPR programs in British Columbia and why they have gone to a framework regulatory approach. That being said, I'm going to do a lot of listening and maybe some asking of questions, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Vice Chair Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this very, very important hearing that we decided earlier in the year that we were going to move forward on discussions on a variety of topics. I want to thank everybody for coming today and agreeing to talk with us about product stewardship and EPR frameworks. I think the legislature engages in this oversight process with good reason. One, to look back at what we've done, and two, to look forward and determine how we can best proceed. Today, I'm especially happy that we're taking the time to hear about the progress that has been made since last year's paint and carpet legislation. It's essential that we see how these programs work before we charge ahead. I'm hopeful that our panelists will have come equipped today with hard data, because it's incumbent that we make our decisions based on facts and not speculation. For instance, if you're planning on making the case that EPR will result in green jobs and taxpayer savings, please also explain what happens to the existing waste management system. Currently in America, we have a well-established waste management system that includes 87 waste-to-energy plants, 9,100 curbside recycling programs, 580 material recovery facilities, and 12,500 recycling drop-off centers. Some of the questions that I'd like to propose are, what are those numbers in California? Does EPR work within, overlap, or replace this existing system? What does work about the current system and what does not work about the current system? Why is EPR the most efficient way to address the challenges in our waste system? And what are the alternatives? It also seems to me that when we're talking about setting up new laws in this specific category, we are also talking about shifting burdens off society in general and onto producers exclusively. What justifies making the producer of a product more liable for the costs of disposal than society, who consumes and ultimately discards the product? And finally, for those of you who are here based in California, I would ask that you address one of the big issues that we need to discuss, which is Prop 26. What does Prop 26 do to the fee structure set up with the paint and carpet programs? What liability issues does it create for the state and for producers? And what threshold should we consider for future EPR bills under a majority or two-thirds vote. With that, I'd like to thank everybody and the opportunity to participate, and I'm looking forward to today's testimony.
Thank you. Vice Chair Knight.
Thank you all for coming today. I know we're getting a late start, so I'll be very, very brief. Many times we do legislation up here because we can do it, and sometimes we never ask the question of whether we should do it. So I'm looking for some insight today to understand where we're going, how we should be proceeding forward, and some of the legislation that has occurred in the past. What kind of progress have we got, and is it the progress that we thought we were going to get? So I look forward to this discussion very much.